Hello and welcome to this CodeBuddies.org live coding session. CodeBuddies is a global community of amazing people who help each other become better at software development through conversations on Slack and peer-to-peer organized study groups and virtual hangouts. Today we're going to be working on the CodeBuddies platform itself. CodeBuddies.org is under a rewrite, and essentially there are several different projects being prototyped right now to see how the general technology field is, how things work, and be able to compare the development process for these various approaches before kind of settling on one. So I've been doing a little bit of Django related development, and I thought I would contribute to the Django prototype effort. So today we're going to work on that a little bit. So I'm just reading through the docs right now on how to get set up. The first thing we'll need to do is create a fork. So I'm here on GitHub. You can see in the lower right hand corner of this video is the address for the GitHub repository, CodeBuddies/Django concept. We will create a fork. Well, it looks like I've already done this. I haven't been developing on this for a little bit. Been focusing on other projects. So let's go ahead and either delete my fork or just get everything synchronized. Okay, one moment. Oh, darn it. Okay, so let's open that Django concept project. Get oriented to the code on the master branch. I need to check my remotes. Git lens should give me a way of checking my remote. The masters for the origin. Here's the remotes. I have origin, so we need to add a remote for the CodeBuddies project so I can actually pull the changes directly up from upstream. Let's check the docs for this. There's no pretense about memorizing everything you do in development. There's a lot of complexity and little subtle nuances, and the tools aren't so good at documenting themselves all the time, but let's see. So we've just got my origin. So we have the CodeBuddies, and now we'll pull in all the changes from the upstream master. And hopefully we'll be ready to roll. And the first challenge we're going to have is just getting the thing running. From the docs. It says make sure you have Postgres 11 installed. That's a little bit of a non-trivial challenge. It's operating system specific, and I think we asked for, I did mention that we should have better instructions here for the setup. I think we had a discussion about this. Again, I haven't come to this project in a while, but what I'm going to do, I don't want to run Postgres on my local computer, and I don't want to set up a Docker container. So I think I will just use a generic SQLite database just to get down the road. I want to actually have some concrete outcome today. Oh, and I have 23. Oh yeah, and I need to push these. So there were some changes in the upstream remote. I pulled those into my local computer. Now I need to push those changes to the origin remote, which is my GitHub repository. So yeah, we'll just go ahead and do that real quick. So now we're in CodeBuddy's Django concept here. Latest commit merged into master was October 6, 2019. So yeah, it's been a few months since mainly Bethany's been working on this, and I was doing some code review. So my latest changes also reflect that now that I've pushed them. 14 commits. If I refresh, then do we have more commits? 37 commits. There we go. So we're up to speed. Very good. So yeah, I'm just going to do something a little bit kludgy. We'll work on improving the setup documentation. I thought there was already a pull request for that, but we'll check it out later. I'm just going to use a snippet to put Django, the Django config, to tell Django to use a SQLite database. So let's go ahead and quickly look at the project structure. So it looks like this folder CBV3, it looks like it's a Python environment that got checked into the repository. So actually I would like to make an issue for that. Let's see, as it is. Yeah, I hope it's just not too condescending or anything like that. Just take that off. There we go. This is the other task. Yeah, so we do need those instructions for setting up Postgres locally for new contributors. Yeah, I'll check these out real quick. Just it's relevant, so. But yeah, I don't want to have like kind of Postgres running on my computer all the time. It's my local development computer, so Docker would be ideal. I do have Docker installed. So this one's going to have us install it globally on my computer. Not so exciting. Don't install Postgres, Docker pull Postgres. Well, that makes sense. So then basically if I'm able to run Docker locally in Postgres in Docker, that is, sorry, I'll need to be able to pass the credentials to the CodeBuddies app that's running, and specifically Postgres user and Postgres DB. Okay, so then when we run Postgres, we can set the password internally in the Docker image and the port and things like that, but mainly these environment variables. Then it looks like there's some specific user and password configurations that this Django concept is expecting. Specifically, where did that go? Well, let's take a look at the code. Okay, so yeah, get past this part, the CBV3. Well, here, I'll just actually remove, I'll create a pull request here. Remove virtual environment. And from head, and then what we'll do is just trying to think of the order of operations here. So we'll delete it because I'm going to be checking back into the master branch, switching back into the master branch, which will then have this folder removed. And here's an example of why you don't really check in. Oh, yeah, it's why you don't really check in or keep virtual environments under revision control, because they're huge. They have a lot of different files. And they're automatically generated when you run the pip install. Also, we shouldn't be using global pip install, so I need to clarify that. We need to give developers instructions on how to use a virtual environment. But for example, here's the site packages folder. So it's just got all the project requirements that are automatically downloaded during the essentially during the pip install process, all of this stuff. And we don't write any of this code, we just pull it in from external sources, so we don't need to keep it under revision control. Okay, so then also we need to add instructions for using virtual environment, excuse me. Hey, what's up, level 2? How you doing? I just saw your text message. Sorry if you said that a moment ago and I didn't notice it. Happy New Year. Let's see, have we hung out since? I can't remember if I've even done any live streaming this year. What have you been up to, level 2? All right, so basically, I'm going to add instructions to install uh-oh, what did I do? I hit a button. create. What would it be? VENV? Oh, come on. All right, cool. Well, I might not get to the sort of higher level task of using this Django tag it. I was actually wanting to get to that, updating one of the project models, adding a field for tags, and using the Django tag it package. But I think I'm going to try to just do these little lower level improvements for readability and maintainability. Okay, cool. Level 2, you still there? All I see is your first message. What have you been up to this glorious new year? We got sunny skies. Well, no, overcast, but in any case. Oh, righty. Let's see. So let's get back to this cleanup task. Basically, I can commit this. It says 5,000 changes. That's huge. Yeah, basically we had a brief discussion. I don't know, stage. Yes, stage all my. Yes. Excuse me. We had a discussion on this CodeBuddies repo, this Django concept repo about, well, basically there's these higher level package managers for Django, for Python, excuse me. Some of them are using pip, which is the default, and then some of them are inventing their own wheel, so to speak, and it's not even the Python wheel. So I suggested pipenv because at that time I was creating the issue. At my work, we had just, my colleague Marcus had just come on board, and he's like, yeah, I've had good experience with pipenv. And I was like, yeah, I'll take your word for it. And it's sort of one of the de facto recommended ones, at least, to use. It gives you a little bit better semantics over pip. There's just questions about the, I'm going to need to concentrate on Visual Studio Code, but basically about the sustainability of the pipenv project. There's some bugs, and there's different perspectives. So it's not really a settled issue in Python what you should use to give you higher level semantics for package management. Okay. So that said, I'm just going to stick with the lower level stuff. Lately, I've been using Poetry even, and that's been pretty nice, but not without its problems. Particularly the IDEs sometimes struggles with it, installing packages or using dev dependencies and things like that. So maybe back to the basics isn't that bad of a thing. I also read an article recently on, I'll try to link to later in this podcast, in this live stream, but describing some of the Python packaging misconceptions, and when people say Python packaging is horrible, maybe how they're zeroing in on the more complicated part of project dependency management and not so much like the creating a Python package part. And then there's still this open debate over whether or not to use pip or even this newer thing called Conda, which is essentially inventing its own packaging ecosystem, probably with a bigger scope. I'm not deeply expert in any of those. I did use Conda for a while. Ended up having a lot of problems with Conda, and particularly getting, trying to take, well, I don't know, somehow getting involved when I just want to use a regular Python virtual environment. Conda was taking precedent even in my IDE, so I stopped using Conda altogether, and then just been back to pip. So maybe back to the basics is the overarching approach, and I think pip is also under improvement. Particularly, people have been concerned about pinning exact versions and keeping the checksum there, so it's explicit. The file size, that your dependencies haven't become corrupted. If, for example, the packaging ecosystem Python packaging index gets hacked or something like that. All right, level 2 says, working on my games, finishing my Twitch extension. About to stream another game out. All right, cool. When are you going to be streaming level 2? I tried to set up a stream schedule, so I know it's difficult, but do you have a stream schedule? Particularly around the holidays, it's hard to do anything on a schedule. What days do you usually stream? Days and times in your time zone, I guess, because we're in different time zones. By the way, isn't it pretty late there right now, or pretty early? Are you up in the middle of the night? I do that sometimes too. Okay, so let's go back and take this step at a time. I'll open up a pull request against this, issue 26. So if I push my changes up to the cloud, to GitHub basically is what that little button means. One moment. I guess it's not gonna ask me my password. All right, cool. If I hop back over to we'll see this. I'll open a pull request. And basically we removed 2 million lines of code. Good grief. Now that 2 million lines of code needs to be checked out. We should actually almost be cleaning up this repo. But every time you do a git pull, or clone that is actually, of this repository, you're going to pull in all those 2 million lines of codes and then delete them. It's now part of the history, the commit graph. So let's, if we actually take a look at this. Code buddies. What do? The contributors graph, I think, shows this pluses and minuses, or here, code frequency actually. Commits, one of the two. Let's double check. No, code frequency. Oof, there we go. And this has been a pretty new project, but yeah, there's all 2 million lines of code in there. So okay, no worries, it happens. And actually, let me double check our git ignore. Looks like we don't have a git ignore. I really just think the default GitHub Python git ignore is a good way to go. So I will actually create an issue for that. It's a small enhancement. I'll check my grammar and stuff. I do some everyday things to put in there. Yeah, I make some pretty bad grammar mistakes. I don't know if this is a good excuse, but since I've been living in Finland, also my my English grammar is getting kind of more Finnish, and my pronunciations even is kind of cool, but also a little bit worrisome. So I have a speech impediment. Probably a lot of reasons for that, but I'll just blame it on living in a different culture. All right, so I'm just going to find this GitHub Python git ignore. Here it is, right here. It's a pretty good one. Let's check it out raw. It's particularly good in our case. Well, keeps our SQLite database out of production out of Git, which we're not using SQLite. But I don't know. I sort of think that it's okay to use SQLite a little bit, especially if you're in a project that's really nascent and you're wanting to help new developers get started, not have to worry about installing Postgres or some other database. I know at some point when you do get more production oriented, then you should be using, you should be using the same database locally, but not for something prototypal. Come on, let's not be too hard on ourselves. But specifically, here's these VMs. This is what I'm looking for. Now, this .env is also good because this not only is used for virtual environments, but also the .env format is used for storing secrets. So just putting that in Git ignore can prevent some common mistakes. And there's other good stuff here. Some of it is excessive, but really having a long Git ignore I don't think is a problem. Unless it starts ignoring things that you actually want to check in, so then you can just remove those lines. But I'm going to just go with the defaults, convention over configuration, sort of. All right, so I'm still in the right thing. Let's go ahead, and I believe this can go in the root. It should go in the root. Now the thing is, the project files are here. And there is a git ignore there, and it does have the default one, but really that should have just been in the root. I think the reason we're having this redundancy is the cookie cutter Django project recommends having your project in a subfolder so you can have your docs and other things in the top level directory. That led to sort of contribute to this issue where they created a named virtual environment which created its own folder that would not have been filtered by this in any case, and then it got checked into Git. I believe git ignore should live at the top level, so I will just delete it here. But I can see the problem. No, this shouldn't be a problem because your Git repo is when somebody might be working on this project, they might, in their editor, just open this CBB Django prototype project, right? Which I think stands for class-based views 3 or something like CodeBuddies v3, CodeBuddies version 3, Django prototype, got it. But when your IDE is detecting your Git environment, it should be able to know that all the Git metadata should be here. Let's see. Yeah, because you've checked it out here. So I'm going to move it. I'm just going to move it. I'm not going to dwell on it too long. Remove that. Oh yeah, I'll just delete it. And then, what's this Git attributes? Set up with cookie cutter. So yeah, just like basically, I see what happened here is cookie cutter did a bunch of stuff, and in a subfolder, and then the subfolder was kind of checked into Git in a parent context. So what I'm gonna do is just move this stuff up to the parent context. Move it. The license file should be in the root. I know I'll create an issue for this also. Got a lot of commas, got commitis, but Ooh, the proc file's a tricky one. We're using Heroku. I'm gonna leave that one alone. Let me just think this through. It's not a trivial thing. Like these do conventionally. Hey, what's up? Level 2 says, I tried to make my games stream 24 hours. Whoa, that is a long time to be streaming. What did you do to keep yourself alert? And your productivity and your code quality is going to be dropping off like fast after even just like 3 hours. Yeah, I don't think it's probably a very effective way to do your development. Now I can see some of these things being so related to code that you'd want them to be in the code folder. You know, it's not black and white. It's not clear cut here. And the cookie cutter Django is kind of inventing its own conventions a little bit. What's runtime? Runtime is closer to the proc file. It's when you deploy to Heroku. It needs to know what version of Python to install. I will leave that close to the proc file. I think that if I move this proc file, it might make it a little difficult to deploy this. I don't want to make the developers' lives difficult. So I'll leave these types of things alone. And this one should almost go in the root. It just depends on where the developer's working. I think the editor config will be picked up. It's almost like cookie cutter Django is getting a little bit in the way here. This really, all of this should have been creating the root of the thing. Because we have a, what is this? We have a docs folder here and everything, so I mean, yeah. There's already a README there. check my grammar, make sure I'm not too. No, these are files. Well, this was a parenthetical statement. I disagree. I think this comma does go there. It might be simple to move all the project files to the project root. This is a parenthetical statement. You can put commas around it because it can be removed from the sentence and still kept. The sentence is still cohesive. I disagree. Sometimes it's difficult though, commas. This thing's an automated tool, so. I just wanted to make sure that this is clear. We're not going to flatten the whole thing, the whole repository. Like, that would not be the goal here. Hey, what's up, Lexio English syntax stream? Yes. Cyberpon, welcome. Yeah, I'm using KDE, K Ubuntu or Kubuntu. I'm not sure exactly how you say that. I've had a really good experience with it. Ubuntu's gotten very stable in the last 5 to 10 years. I don't know. And then I really appreciate the user experience of KDE, and I'm able to actually use Kubuntu both at home and at my day job. So I think any operating system I've ever used, I've had some gotchas where I've just kind of gotten myself in a corner. Maybe Mac OS X, which I haven't used very much, but or Windows would be more stable. But the main thing that has broken for me was Grub in the last 6 months, that is. There was some new, I was relating to Secure Boot, and I can't remember, I ran the Ubuntu 19.10 upgrade, and there was a Secure Boot module that somehow was, when it got upgraded, stopped working correctly, so I just had to go into my Grub configuration and comment out a line or say not to remove that not to use that extension. So that's, yeah, not a trivial thing I would expect most people need to be able to do, so to speak, but I had help from Stack Overflow and was able to get things up and running within a couple of hours of searching. I think it was not too bad. But overall, it's been really stable. Do I prefer Linux over Windows? Yeah, I switched to Linux full-time in 2008. I haven't used Windows since, really. And yeah, there have been some problems that I've had. So back in 2008 was a little more not for the weak of heart, so to speak. In other words, there's just weird stuff you'd have to get into, like Wi-Fi drivers or 3D drivers. And there are still gotchas. Not for the faint of heart, I guess is the saying. Well, I think there's going to be issues, and with Windows, it doesn't ship with drivers, so you have to install them and things like that. Whereas Linux, I've typically been able to configure Wi-Fi or graphics through at least my package manager. Just increasingly, Wi-Fi and printers just sort of work. Yeah, it's not perfect. I recommend it. I recommend doing a dual boot at first. It took me at least 1 or 2 years to transition from Windows to full-time Linux. And in that period, I had certain applications I wanted to use that I had to boot back into Windows for. If you play a lot of games, you'll still probably keep Windows around. Although Steam is doing a lot of good work to make games run in Linux, I think because they have their Steam box or whatever it's called. And they want games to run cross-platform. So they have this project called Proton, which is a compatibility layer making Windows games run in Linux. Steam and Lutris, yeah, cool. So, Cyberpon, do you run Linux, or are you just genuinely curious about comparing it to Windows? Now I can get back on the coding thing. What is any opinions here about the project structure? I don't want to get too sidetracked with this kind of stuff. I'll just create the issue and see what people think about it. I believe this comment should go there. So I'll submit the new issue. So in other words, I will keep my pull request clean for now. I will not commit these changes. I will reset these changes. All right, Cyberpon says, well, I'm trying to switch over to Linux instead of Windows for some years. Yeah, but as you said, it's difficult because of gaming and some programs missing on Linux. And me as a developer really find Linux as a more suitable OS to develop on. Yeah, I agree that Linux is, and Mac, OS X, I think my colleagues at work who use that say they've had a really good experience. And they're close cousins, so most of your tooling and commands will be similar there. This is to the, this developer experience is so important that as it's probably commonly known now, Windows isn't actually including Linux in its default. I don't know how to describe it, but Windows now includes the Linux kernel and Bash, I think, because they know how important developers are. Developers, as made famous by Steve Ballmer. All right, cool. Yeah, Bash is almighty. Yeah, I don't want to get into holy wars about that. I use Bash as its default, and I try not to stray too far. Luxio TV says, the closer it gets to Linux experience, the better developing feels. So why not just do Linux, I guess? Yeah, that's right. For development, if you can do a dual boot, I don't recommend doing what are those called, virtual box or something like that. You're just going to, a dual boot will be much cleaner. Mac OS is nice because it feels like Linux. Yeah. And Linux can be made to feel like Mac OS X. And I think there's some, at least aesthetically, if you like the look and feel, but not deeply. They're still two different sort of ecosystems. Oh, I got a wrong button there. I guess it didn't. Sorry about that. All right, so where are we going now? So I didn't mess with that kind of stuff. I'll switch, and they do have a PR for this, for these Postgres notes. Very good, all right. Why hasn't this been merged, I wonder? Luxio TV says, I just use my beloved tiling windowing manager. I really like the way macOS looks, but I don't know if I would just lose productivity. I don't appreciate enough how lightning fast I can just switch between things and work in a terminal. Very nice. Yeah, my friend Conrad at work, he swears by his tiling window manager. Light DM, I think. No, it's a display manager. Look. I have to think about what he's using. Let's see. i3, he's using tiling window manager. This is the one Conrad uses. Is there improved tiling window manager? I don't know. I'm not that hardcore. For some reason, just the website even, just is like, okay, this is for more geeky people. All right, fair enough. I'm also a geek, but or nerd, I think maybe is the appropriate. I've transitioned into nerddom some years ago. Yeah. But yeah, that's just too hardcore for me. I don't know. Okay, Lexio says they use i3 as well. Okay, Cyberpon has to go. Thanks for chatting and have a wonderful day of coding. Yes, hope to see you around, Cyberpon. Thanks for stopping in. All right, so it looks like we do have some Docker instructions. Why didn't this get merged? I'm going to ask. When was this opened? 47 lines of code, September. All right. All right, so if I provide this database URL, string. I've so lost contexts with this, but let us. Let's do that. Forget that apostrophe. Dun, dun, dun. Let me just make sure the database URL is in there. Yep, it is indeed there. So let's go ahead and kind of just see it rendered. I'm going to read the file because I need to use it right now. View file, there we are. Thank you. Set up a Docker. So Docker pull Postgres. Yes, we're going to do this. I'm not going to get on too many sidetracks. I was going to search for a nice VS Code plugin for restructured text files, but no, stay focused. All right. So we're going to switch back to master. And that brings my thingamabobber back in. There we go. Let's create a branch for... Well, let's try actually just running this, and then I'll create a branch. All right, Lexia, what kind of other tools do you use with in your windowing tiling window manager? You got a command line. Do you use an IDE, or are you kind of a Vim or Emacs level? I guess Emacs is an operating system, so I don't know. The kind of tools do you enjoy using? So let's try this. Docker pull Postgres. Boom. Right. So I have to snap install it because I think Docker is having some troubles on Ubuntu. Well, later versions of Ubuntu, like 1910. All right, one moment. Level 2, you still around? What are you up to? All right, what do we have? Docker, pull, Postgres. I might need to add myself to the Docker group, I think. Level 2 is coding. All right, so you're deep in thought. Linux. Docker group. So I think I'm going to run this command. Oh goodness, I always do that. I'm going to copy or paste. When I'm going to copy or paste into the most of them, I'm going to paste into this shell. Okay, that doesn't work. Then I always do Control-Shift-C because I need to do Control-Shift-V to paste. I wish the shell would just use the dang Control-V, Control-C commands. All right. New. Oh no, I have to log out and log in. Damn it. I'm just gonna do this another time. I will switch to. I'm just gonna use SQLite. Unless they mean by log out. If I can log in, I can just close my shell and open it. I'll try that at least. Well, let's just try Docker pull here. See if that worked. All right. No, permission done. Okay, close the shell and reopen it. Maybe that'll work. Because I'll have to. It's ridiculous. All right. So let me just get a default here for using SQLite. Oh, I just move on to the task at hand. Dang it. I'm gonna open up this file in another window. One moment. Western Friend. I've been using SQLite on Western Friend, so I'll just use that. Settings base. For some reason, open up as PDF. In my PDF viewer, that's kind of weird. All right. It would kind of be nice to have a switch for this. So let me go ahead and create a branch. And this will be for the task. This will be a task-related branch. So yeah, all right, I'll just go and get on with it. That's all. So we have this config folder, which has settings in it. Which has the base settings. I'll hop back over to Twitch stream, make sure nobody's chatting. Andre Lamas says, "This is too smart. I kindly request a Hello World app." Actually, I did Hello World recently with Wagtail. It's I can do one real quick if you want to see how it works. Yeah. Are you still there, Andre Lamas? I'll do a Hello World if you're still around. I'll do a Wagtail Hello World. It's a pretty cool one. But yeah, this is a live coding session, so it's not necessarily a tutorial. Level 2 says, "You're living life on the edge if you don't get commit in a minute." I've done a lot of updates, but I just sit down and then think of the commit message or just write a broad message. I don't have any changes, though, to commit. I just created a new branch. The stuff I was previously doing, I removed the folder and I reset all those. I removed the virtual environment folder, I committed that, pushed it, and opened a pull request. But then the second thing I was doing was restructuring the project, and I realized that we should do that with a conversation. So I just opened an issue and backed off of that. I thought I could just add the default gitignore file, but it turns out it already exists. And it should be superseded by this file, this thing. So let me actually. Cool. Andre Lama says, or I'll just call you Andre, says, "Do you know a good package to work with HTML? I can scan a website and get its HTML. Now I need an easy way to get things out of it." Beautiful Soup. Web scraping with Beautiful Soup 4. What do I have? I'm going to paste this in real quick. Before I lose it. I think this will be, I don't know which is the best article. It's 2018, 2017, 2016, 2018. There's even books written on this, but Free Code Camp. Well, let's check out Free Code Camp. This is a pretty good community. Boom, level 2 says, "You mean just using Python 3 to get the HTML?" I think this will be a good start for you. Beautiful Soup 4. It's going to let you parse and traverse that DOM, look for patterns, snag the bits of data. You know, you can find header ones with some sort of attribute. Snag the data out of there. You can get the text from the things and then drop it into a CSV file. So yeah, this is a pretty good one. Free Code Camp is also a good community. They have a curriculum for learning development, and you actually do real world projects for nonprofit organizations. So highly recommend them if you're wanting to go down the career path of being a developer while actually building a resume of concrete experience. Andre Lamas, yeah. Says, level 2, I have a Python simple script to get HTML from a URL. Now that I got the HTML file and string, I need to get info out of it. Tasso Khan says web scraping. Yep, that's exactly it. What do you recommend, Tasso, for web scraping in Python? I think that's the only constraint here. Oh, Dev2, also I'm going to give shout outs to Dev2. It's sort of like a modern medium, so to speak. Modern, I don't know, but it's a medium replacement. If you're just tired of all those invasive popovers and stuff like that, and advertisements, you know, sign in to view, pardon the interruption type of stuff. Dev platform is open source, actually written in Ruby on Rails, which is okay, no shame in the game. And actually, Ruby on Rails is a very mature platform as well. It's been around for a long time, and so I don't mean anything to sort of no harm towards Ruby on Rails developers. I started looking at Ruby on Rails a while ago. I actually got diverted looking at Ruby on Rails when I should have been looking at Django in hindsight for my personal preference. Anyway, I'm back on track with Django. Ruby on Rails in the meantime has continued to mature. There's some really great open source projects built with that. In general, if you're doing any kind of web development, specifically, I guess, find a framework in your particular language. If you're in JavaScript, it's increasingly difficult because of the churn and lack of stewardship ethos in that community and ecosystem. That things can't get up to the levels that you see from Ruby on Rails, Django, Laravel. What do we have in Java? I'm trying to think in Java land what they have, but in any case, yeah. It'll save you a lot of time. I don't think that frameworks get in our way, not in my experience. And oftentimes you'll find that when you have a problem, the framework has already solved it, or there's something in the ecosystem where they've solved it. Spring, yeah, I think it's Tasso Khan, that's on Java Spring. Level 2 says, Python should have a way to build a fake DOM with HTML and then function to get the text node from that fake DOM is all I can think of. Yeah, that's exactly right. Java Spring says, yeah, Tasso Spring Framework. Yep. So it just depends on your language preference. Man, but then if I see something like this on a framework site, I'm like, what? Trust Arc. Okay, I'm not going to click through that. So yes, level 2 is on the right path. If you look at the Beautiful Soup API, it's going to do just that. It's going to give you an API or a programming interface and methods to traverse a DOM, document object model. So we'll get, you get your document source as a text, and then you instantiate Beautiful Soup on that source, and you tell it's an LXML. I'm not sure of the details. I haven't really done this. And then you start, here's where it is, you start finding stuff. So you're kind of, it's like jQuery in a way. Now let's see, Tasso says, I can currently learn statistics with Python pandas. That fits more on me when I'm studying biology on Kaggle. So I left frameworks a long time ago. I mean, you just mentioned a framework. Pandas is a framework. It's like a framework for data manipulation. It's, in other words, a higher level abstraction of best practices and an API that lets you do things efficiently and elegantly. Pandas, working with, it's built on NumPy and stuff like that. So the main thing about a framework is that frameworks are just patterns, and they're just best practices that have been codified, usually in the form of documentation, as well as the code itself, or an ecosystem of projects around it. So Pandas is a good example because it's got integrations like Pandas cufflinks for data visualization, things like that. And Pandas is not reinventing the wheel. They didn't invent their own vectorized, what it was called, functions on NumPy. They just use NumPy for that. What are they called? NumPy vector arrays, I guess, or vectors, aren't they? Anyway, Andre. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm Tasso Contessa. I left web frameworks a long time ago. Sorry, I misunderstood you there. Yeah. Okay. So, yeah, that'd be kind of cool to have a web framework. Well, maybe I'm just thinking aloud here, stream of consciousness, but where you can give a graphical interface to sort of data manipulation and visualization. I know there have been a few that have attempted this, like Redash, Superset, but those, in my experience, kind of rely either on a SQL engine like Postgres to do the data manipulation. There's another one called Orange 3 that gives you graphical interfaces on not a web interface, but a local computer to do data science-y things. It, in some cases, for example, you bring in your data set and then you get a data table. That might be a data frame underneath the interface, depending on the type of module and analysis. This is all Python code. I've been really excited about this Orange 3 project for a while, but have come up seriously short when trying to use it in any kind of actual project. It feels more academic to me, like a good experiment and a good proof of concept, but the developers even have taken specific stance against including capabilities that are common to what are data science workflows, extending beyond just basic visualization and manipulation, such as deploying a model to a server or importing data from a cloud or integrating with other ecosystems. A little bit on this topic, but when I think of a sort of proper graphically oriented data science workflow, it's not a web framework again, something that has a rich toolbox of a lot of different capabilities. Nime has been my work go-to now. You just do everything more or less visually, although you can resort to scripting, or you can write Java code, Python scripts, things like that. You sort of pipe data, you bring it into your environment, you can manipulate it, run summary statistics on it, divide it, partition it up for batch processing, run JavaScript against it, Python, build models, score those models, plot the predictor functions so you can see what's going on along the way, and even deploy it, the model in the S3 bucket, all sorts of stuff. Let's see. We got a lot of good comments here. Let's see. All right. I think Andre says, I'll check that then. Thank you very much. Beautiful soup, I think is what. And then we got K19AFA. It's a Twitch Prime member. Hey, what are you trying to build? I am working on a task for CodeBuddies.org, which is a online community of code mentors and learners, and we're all co-mentoring each other. There's no like hierarchy necessarily, but CodeBuddies.org is itself open source, and we are rewriting the platform. So we got CodeBuddies on GitHub. It's a social code learning and collaboration platform, nonprofit. Community, I think, is the more important part of it. The platform is just a tool we're using to build community. The original platform was written in JavaScript, Meteor.js, which also is my background in web development over the last 5 years has been with Meteor.js. Unfortunately, Meteor is kind of becoming abandoned, even by the core Meteor developers, which is why I harbor a little bit of frustration with the JavaScript ecosystem, the kind of pervasive mentality about building things, but also saying, well, that is over a couple years old, it's no longer modern or new in Chinese, so thus it's not worth time, or why are you using that? That's so passé now. Whereas coming to Python has been just a total different mindset and revelation about how things can be developed and evolved over time, and how the ecosystem can integrate around it and take you to higher levels of abstraction. I'm sure JavaScript developers will say, well, yeah, React has been around for a long time, and look at the ecosystem. Yeah, so that's true, and maybe that's a good counterexample of a thriving ecosystem. It's something that's staying around for a long time. But React is not a framework, and you end up cobbling together your own sort of ad hoc framework there. So I'm building I'm contributing to this next version of CodeBuddies using the Django framework, which is a genuine framework for mostly increasingly back-end oriented development, but it's, more or less you can run your templates and render your templates on the server side and things like that. So yeah. Oh, so Archie Faction says, could you use Julia MATLAB for data visualization, wrap that in another language for interacting with the data, maybe wrap that in Rust and then use WebAssembly. Now you have a full embedded data framework. Yeah, that sounds actually kind of convoluted, but interesting. Julia MATLAB for data visualization. Python has some great data visualization. Tasso mentioned Seaborn. And Andre Lama says, it's time for Sumo. By Sumo, did you mean simulation of urban mobility? Probably not. This is a little bit more esoteric. This is something I've been checking out, though. It's also written in Python, where you can create these scenarios. You create urban environments and origins and destinations where people start and want to go, and then types of vehicles, and you can actually simulate those and watch those people move around and test things out, like, well, what would the emissions be? Would we have traffic deadlock? Things like that. It's a pretty cool project. I haven't had the opportunity to dig into it too much, though. Okay, so codebuddies.org is having some problems, it sounds like. I haven't checked that today. Okay, so the website's working, but the login with GitHub redirected to a blank page that contains a single string incomplete response received from application. All right, let me check this out. Thanks for reporting this, Arch. It worked for me because I'm already signed in to GitHub. But this is interesting. We probably should. Andre says no, literal sumo. The competition is tomorrow. Andre, are you a sumo wrestler or are you going to watch it? Tasso Khan says, my brother studies GIS. It's a great example to show. Yeah, that's actually, I'm really interested in geographic information systems or science myself, and I'm trying to put my sort of life and career path, that is, in a direction of more GIS work. I've been able to do some GIS work in my day job, but maybe that's picking up. Level 2 says, you work in WebAssembly archification. What language do you deal with to compile to WebAssembly? I want to do C++, but kind of want to wait until we can do everything that one's doing native in the browsers as far as manipulating the DOM. Yeah, I was reading a comment to the effect that WebAssembly basically is sort of encouraging the pattern of rendering everything to canvas, which is a similar approach to what Flutter has taken to doing cross-platform mobile native interfaces. They just bypass the native widgets altogether, the iOS and Android native widgets in this case, in the case of Flutter, and create a canvas and just render widgets there. I think the WebAssembly folks are also like saying, well, maybe DOM's not a good target for us right now. Our initial efforts are better spent to compile Qt, for example, code into canvas rendering instead of creating, proper web components or something like that. Qt for WebAssembly might be something you're interested in. Check out Level 2 if you haven't already heard of this through the grapevine. You're able to write C++ and target WebAssembly. Archification says, I don't really work with WebAssembly, but I'm really enjoying Rust. Yeah, cool. By the way, Archification, have you heard of Citybound? I'm really interested in lately in hopefully just in like urban sort of simulation city games, and how we can sort of create game-like experience for actual urban design and planning. I think this is an important thing that when you look at GIS tools like Arc or QGIS, they're very difficult. It's like assembly language almost for what people are trying to do. It's like a machine interface. They're so generic. And if you look at these games for city planning, city planners, GIS is an important aspect of that. There's a lot of other social and bureaucratic aspects involved. But when you actually have a tool that sort of gives you a game-like experience, I think that would be kind of like working with Python in a way from my background in JavaScript, where you just like, you have very specific things that reflect almost one-to-one with the concepts you're already natively working with in your head. Like in the case of urban planning, you have like zoning or building road networks or utilities, things like that. But in GIS, you have points and polygons and attributes and things. And so there's this layer of abstraction that's missing. And I think these games encapsulate it. You can play City Skylines or other games like that, SimCity, and you're having a good time and you're doing urban planning. But in the real world, urban planning environment, there's not really, to my knowledge, such an approach. Lack of abstraction, yeah. Are we talking similar to, let me get back on the context here. Artification says, they were just able to log into CodeBuddies with GitHub after literally just clicking the button 5 times and then in a row and hoping. Okay, so yeah, maybe there's, I think CodeBuddies might be being deployed to Heroku free tier or something like that, and it might go to sleep or something every once in a while. I've had some weird bugs where I've tried to do something with codebuddies.org, like schedule a hangout, and then stuff just didn't work, and I ended up clicking the button 5 times to schedule a hangout, or actually it was more like 10, because I tried filling in the form in multiple browsers and stuff, and then all of a sudden, boom, I had 10 hangouts scheduled, and boom, it had been tweeted out 10 times, so we had a little bit of cleanup. I'll have to follow up with Linda about how CodeBuddies is being hosted. All right, so let's see. Here's Citybound, by the way, though. So this is the reason to bring it up is, and there's a long digression there about urban planning. But this is written in Rust. It's open source city planning game. Tasso says, this is kind of interesting. Tasso says there's some really great examples showing the necessity of Sumo. Predictive police patrolling to target hotspots and cover response demand. So is Sumo basically just like a martial art, sort of like judo or something like that? So it's not just like really big, burly wrestlers. It's actually something that just people of normal size and stature could use in self-defense. My son might be taking judo soon, which is kind of cool. He's going to go to a Budo, which I think Budos typically focus on Japanese martial arts, if I'm not mistaken. So that would imply maybe he's going to be studying Aikido or Judo. But his mom also said there might be karate or taekwondo. She said karate. In which case, it doesn't matter. It's just like an introductory thing for young people to learn basic martial art moves. And I think there's a whole family of these martial arts. It doesn't matter their point of origin so much. I mean, you can see the effectiveness of mixed martial arts when you bring the best aspects, or Jeet Kune Do, where you borrow from these different sources. Level 2 says, as long as the API is like native DOM API, I would prefer something simple, like working more with native feature than abstracted API to interact with the stuff in the environment. Yeah, that makes sense. So when these, I think you're mentioning the frameworks, the development frameworks that target web application development, building web native interfaces and things. Yeah, I'm not sure if the Qt WebAssembly for Qt, or Qt for WebAssembly, is going to give you DOM APIs, but it's going to allow you to hook into the C++ ecosystem. And Qt's another, pretty mature framework. So I don't know enough Rust. I'd like to get to know the city-bound code a little bit better, but I have two kind of concerns about it. One is I don't know Rust, so I don't really know how to approach it. But two, I think it's like a one-person, one-developer show, and I think that's not good for the sustainability of a project. And three, I guess I have three concerns that there's no comments in the code that I can find almost at all, which is a little bit of a red flag to me that the developer maybe is so in their zone or thinks their code is just obvious and self-documenting that it doesn't need any narrative. And I believe that's a big mistake and a big red flag, because code is a human language for humans to interact with computers, but code is written for humans to understand first and foremost. And the semantics of the programming language shouldn't be the primary interface for comprehension. You should be able to use native natural language in many cases throughout the code to explain what's going on. And that happens to be English, and I don't mean to sound elitist, but just acknowledging that English is the lingua franca in international software development for the time being. But in any case, if your developers have a different native language, then you should add comments and try to add those comments in their native language of the primary development community. For international projects, then we just need an auxiliary language. English happens to be that for now. I feel a little bit privileged because I'm a native English speaker. I should be grateful for that also. But yeah, other than that, I'm not trying to really harsh on Citybound. The reason I'm concerned about it being a one developer show and having limited documentation is because the developer seems to be getting burnt out, and there's a whole slew of city simulating games. I actually created a list on Wikipedia of over 12 of these games that have petered out, and the city simulation is a very complicated thing, and you just need to have a way of sustaining that development, making it easy to maintain, make it easy to understand these concepts, and incorporating changes from outside contributors. I'm not sure if Citybound checks those boxes, but it's very cool proof of concept. Kiwi says, Tasso-kun says, Kiwi is a good alternative to Qt. It's a great choice too. Yeah, Kiwi I've been keeping my eye on. The documentation is a little bit lacking though, to be honest. And any of the books I found on Kiwi are from like 2015. I do think that it's valuable to have an ecosystem where either the APIs are so stable you don't need to write books all the time, or that the ecosystem is so broad in terms of participation that people are writing books all the time, or keeping books up to date, because documentation again matters. Code APIs are really important, that your code API is also self-documenting, but when you're writing code you need this, and when you're learning a framework you need more than just the APIs. You need concrete examples, cross-cutting examples, not just documentation about how this method or that method works, but how to use this in a flow. Example applications. Kiwi has a lot. The Kiwi Garden. Yeah, totally. I recommend Kiwi. Also, Level 2 says, Andre, those are... I'm not sure, I lost the thread on that one, but Andre sent it. Oh, I see it. Andre sent an imager screenshot of those little badges, the GitHub badges. Those can be good indications of the project health. Also, yeah, code cleanliness, like how difficult it is to refactor or understand the code, how much test coverage there is, whether or not it's got tooling for developers to get started, if there's clean code conventions to follow, when the latest release was. I also like to see how many contributors there are and how recent and prolific the contributors are. Are they just giving a few lines of code here and there, one person coming in doing a pull request, another, or are there multiple long-term core maintainers, multiple months and dozens of commits? Those are good indicators too. If we look at the Citybound on GitHub, again, I'm not trying to harsh on Citybound, I'm actually recommending it as a really cool project, but these things it's got 20 contributors, right, which sounds good on the surface, but it's got really one contributor, and then some people who have come in and done a few things. These are not to be minimized. If you've got over, this person only came in for a few months though. Yeah, beyond that, then you get to sort of drive-by committers. And if this AE play burns out on it, then I think this project is going to be in trouble. So they should do what they can to make it sustainable. Tasso says, yeah, documentation looks like a bit of a mess, but they have a great examples with Internet of Things. Yeah, Tasso is still talking about the Kiwi framework, I believe, in that case. Yeah, so maybe there will be a documentation sprint for the Kiwi framework. I'll just go ahead and show it up here. cross-platform, because I'm actually trying to research on how to build these some cross-platform native apps right now for a couple of projects I'm working on, and an idea I have brewing. I've looked towards Kiwi. Also, their core UI widgets are a little bit lacking. They do have a material UI widgets package available. So yeah, check out Kiwi. Also, there are some really nice looking projects. Even games and things. Multi-touch interfaces, yeah. And this is a good looking example. I think this is proprietary, but in any case, it looks nice. Very cool. Let's check the Kiwi GitHub real quick. For the core framework, Kiwi has 371 contributors. It's been around for a while, since 2011. It's got a steady stream of commits, sort of tapering off, but maybe that's because it's out of the initial sort of threshing and innovation stage, and now it's in more of a maintenance mode. One of the original core developers sort of burnt out, and a couple of other core contributors have come in their place. We've got multiple people who've come around for a while, but if I look at the recent year, let's just look at the last year of development. It's hard to tell, but I think they've at least got multiple people with over 10 commits, and many of whom have been active the whole year, so they're not just like sort of coming and going. Maybe they've got a personal project they're building. They're actually contributing to the framework though. Yeah, it's hard to tell whether these things will stay around or not. I'll show you this Meteor.js framework that I built a couple of projects with. It had a really good heyday. And then I think some people started picking it apart in the name of scalability. And it lost its original vision of simplicity and developer ergonomics and being able to prototype things and pretty quick and simply. And then in the last year, I think it's been sold. Okay, so that did refresh. And maybe it's not so bad at dire straits, but yeah, it just doesn't look. I mean, there's basically one core contributor also. Hey, what's up, Dr. Unafraid? Good to see you. I just noticed your message. I'm kind of a little bit up in the stream. I'm trying to keep up, but this has been a really active chat, and I've actually been doing more chatting and exploring than actual work. Lovely says, I'm not fully sure if... anyway, the GitHub badges is what Level 2 and Andre are discussing. So essentially these little badges are signifiers of project. Oops, that's city-bound. How did that? Copy link. Location. Okay, so this doesn't give a, you can just make your own SVG buttons here. Okay, cool. Yeah, these little badges are signifiers of project health in some degree, to some degree. All right, cool. Microscopic transport simulation. Very cool, look at this. Wow. Is that a roundabout? Looks kind of like a roundabout. Okay, well, all right, let's get back on task here. I'm just gonna add this Django package. I've got my pull request, my branch open, and cleaning up stuff. You can see how far afield we've gone, but that's the whole point of this live coding session. It's really an Ask Me Anything session. I'm really grateful to have other people contributing and discussing things in a way I just don't think this should be so focused on me. To be honest, it's like I'm trying to help promote Code Buddies and things like that. So here we are, back to the Code Buddies. So the task at hand, I just went ahead and I'm going to use SQLite. I'm going to create a virtual environment, so it's like Python 3. I forget naming the command. I'm used to using poetry now. And then you create the virtual environment name, I think it is, right? It's called environment. I'm in the core, I think Python 3 is my default. Python 3 is going to be the default for Ubuntu 20.4, I think. Python 2 has reached end of life. Dr. Afraid says, what time is it there? It's 2:08. Archification says SQL heavy. Yeah, by default, the project uses Postgres, and I don't disagree with that. I think Postgres is a great database. I couldn't even get the Docker to work if you were here a little bit earlier. Docker doesn't have good packaging for Ubuntu 19.10, and I installed Docker from a snap for Ubuntu. Then I have to not reboot, but log out and log back in order for my Docker group to be active on my user, and I didn't want to cancel the live stream. So there I am, there I stand, here I sit. New environment has been created. Do you want to select it for the workspace folder? Yeah, let's do that. Okay, now we're not thinking about Bobber. Tasso Khan says, by the way, I suggest you take a look at Pandas too. They have a peak in 2020. Okay, yeah, I totally agree on the Pandas way. It's a little bit awkward at times, can be a little bit frustrating, but yeah, it's one of our go-to tools for data manipulation, processing. Even visualization has got ready-made a couple API methods for plotting a histogram, for example. And Pandas cufflinks. What do you think of Pandas cufflinks, Tasso? All right, cool. So now I think we can just pip install, since we're in our project folder. So we're install the requirements from CBB underscore Django prototype. Requirements text should be there. Dot text, and it should have recursive references to the base and local. Very cool. Okay. If you like Plotly, I've been using Plotly, JavaScript plotting library, for my JavaScript-oriented project. A caveat: there's not a lot of maturity in Python, in JavaScript plotting ecosystem in general, and that is also evident when you look at the proliferation of JavaScript plotting libraries, but the lack of consistency or completeness, sort of. There's only a couple of examples I can think of with varying degrees of maintenance. Plotly is one that have a full-fledged API. Plotly is one of them. It's got commercial backing. There's one called eCharts, which also has commercial backing from, I think, Baidu, and one called DAO Charts, which it's not very well maintained. It doesn't have, probably not very sustainable, but the API is very similar to what you get from, for example, Seaborn, where it's data oriented. You just kind of pass the data into the chart and you say, this is my column for the X data, this is my column for the Y data. Whereas the other plotting libraries, often you have to map across the data frame and get an array of values and say, these are an X value array, this is a Y value array, which might not seem like much on the face of it, but it's just a little bit of extra work for the developer. And if you've used Seaborn, you know how nice a data-oriented API can be. It looks like Andre and Level 2 have had some great discussion and getting each other on the same path. I think, are you still working on the web scraping task discussion? Tasso says, a while back in 2015, I used Plotly to make stock prices website. Yeah. It's good. The visualizations are elegant. It has nice things like, one of the things that you'll find missing in many JavaScript date libraries is date parsing. So if you have time series data, the charting library, like Chart.js, it just treats those as, for my example, I don't necessarily mean to harsh on Chart.js, but it just treats those as like raw strings, more or less. Whereas if you have intelligent date handling built into the charting library, it can do things like not display every month. It can say, well, we're reviewing a whole multiple years of data, so let's just, this case it is displaying every month. But if I were able to zoom out, it might just show me year over year instead of having month over month labels. I don't see an example of that. But those are the types of features you get from like a more mature framework. Plotly is nice. It's very interactive. And you can export as pictures. You can select data. You can filter columns. Things like that. Those are what you get in a mature framework. I think, Chart.js might to a certain extent. I don't want to harsh on it. I know it's a very popular one, but it's just not fully fledged. It's very appealing looking though. And it could be that it'll get to that point of maturity. 8 chart types. But if I look at Tau charts or E charts, I'm sorry, I'm in the wrong tab. Here's Tau charts. Let me minimize my thing. There we go. Here's Chart.js. And here is cufflinks for Plotly, so that we have them on stream. So yeah, cufflinks is just taking Plotly and rendering out interactive charts. So if you're, even in a notebook, they're interactive, but if you're deploying a dashboard or something like that, and you just want to work primarily in Python, not have to worry about JavaScript, and you have a data frame that's already prepared, then you say, let's plot it. Here's our x-axis, and here's our y-axis, and the data frame gives you, you have to map your data to the axis attributes rather than declaring which column contains the data, which is a little bit different. But again, the pandas having built on NumPy makes those vectorized operations very straightforward, so it's not too difficult. So I'll just demo again. These are interactive. These, you can filter stuff. You can say, I don't want to see this line, and then click it away. Zoom in, and if you drag, you can see ranges of dates. Then you'll start to see, now we've got automatic date parsing, so now it's showing days instead of months. This is because it's treating the date as a proper data type, as opposed to just a string to be rendered on an axis as an axis label. So yeah, that's what you get with a higher level thing. I'm not sure Chart.js might offer that. Again, don't mean to harsh on it, but I'm not using it for a time series. Here's a time series example. Well, looks like it's got some static examples. I don't know. I don't have a lot of confidence in it, to be honest. Dow charts might not be so well maintained, but it has the interactive features that we're accustomed with. But look at this. You pass in your data, which is like a JavaScript array of JavaScript objects, that is. And then you tell what your X and Y axis properties are in each data. It does the mapping for you. It abstracts it. You can then select a different combination of axes. So I prefer this type of API. I'm a little bit spoiled by Seaborn, as was mentioned. I don't know if Dow Charts has a healthy pulse. Not so much. Darn it. But yeah, there's that. And then the other one was eCharts, which comes from Baidu. Now it's part of Apache Foundation, Apache Software Foundation. So that's a good signal in my view. eCharts doesn't use, underneath it doesn't use D3. And it's rendering directly to Canvas or SVG. Let me hop over to my Twitch stream real quick. D3, Tassokan says is great too. Yeah, I've tried to pick D3-oriented plotting libraries. D3 is too low level of a plotting API for my tastes. It's more like assembly language for building charts. I'd like a chart to be pre-defined, though. Very common charts like, bar charts or time series. So then I turn to these higher level abstractions. Sorry for the flashing graphics there. So this is rendering to SVG or Canvas. Depending on the data size, you'll need to switch over to Canvas. Doesn't use D3 to my knowledge. It's declarative though. I don't know if that means data oriented. I haven't used it very much. Anyway, I'll pop these links in there. If anyone has some great data visualization projects they're working on, do go ahead and share those in the chat. I'd like to check them out. I'm doing a couple data visualization projects myself. They're open source, so I can do some streams on those later. And I'm seriously considering migrating from Plotly to eCharts recently, due to some maybe a little bit of shortcomings in Plotly APIs and some awkwardness I've encountered in some of the charts, particularly responsiveness on changing screen orientations or something like that. I can't remember exactly, but and like overlapping labels and stuff that just maybe was made difficult by the original implementation. Although it's good, cufflinks, Plotly, Pandas is great stuff. Tasso says, with Flask, a simple app to learn web servers. Okay, so what have you built with Flask, Tasso? Do you have any open source projects you worked with on Flask? So, all right, back to task. I've got my project installed. Nice. Oh, okay, so let me just CD change into the. So this is why I don't know. I don't think we need to have our project in this subdirectory here. I think it's a little bit. And now my environment is going to be not ignored. Ah, poop. It's a little bit awkward, a little bit of a challenge right now. So what I can do is just open the. Just not a simple issue. When you do a default Python in virtual environment, it wants to create that virtual environment in your working directory, whereas like pandas or pipenv, they are not pandas, but Python, poetry or pipenv will create it in your user directory. Let me think here for a second. I just think I'm going to maybe do that and move this get ignore here. I know it's not been agreed on. I think this whole folder needs to be moved up one level until we know we need it, until we know we have something else that's going to be kept here. Now this get ignore should include env, but it doesn't, so it's not the full. Refresh this now. There we go. I know it's a long commit message, but I'm going to do it. So I don't add one line there. Okay, settings JSON, and that should be in the get ignore also. So I'll go and add VS Code, VS Code. Okay. If I would have used .env, we would have been okay. Anyway. What are we using? VS Code. I don't want to check in VS Code metadata. And base pi. This I'll ignore. If anyone's worked with Django, is there a way I can, I suppose, look for a local environment? I can create an environment variable that says use SQLite. Yeah, let me try that. The settings. So for the base pi, if read.environment file, I'll just use this pattern. Copy and paste down here. Oops, no, not Shift Tab, just Tab. Oh, what happened? Oh, darn, no button there. Oh, come on, this one too. Very cool, and let's see if it'll install AutoPep8 as dev dependency in the project. Okay, the conversation got a little bit quiet now that I've switched back to coding. Maybe it's not so exciting as these what we're having these ad hoc discussions. But I am here to do some live coding, so I'm going to do some live coding. So now we'll just need to set that. What do you just call it? Export? Yeah, here we go. And cd into directory, clear the terminal, run server, migrate. So let's see, name, all right. Name OS is not defined. Okay. Baster is not defined. Okay. This is a weird one. Just have to find out where the file system definitions are made, or if there's already a baster equivalent. There's media root, static file, static dir, root dir. I guess they're using root directory, I think. -3, what is this? No documentation to explain why they're doing this. And it's a little bit of a tangle. So I think if I use appsdir, we should be good to go. Let's try that. running migrations now. So they couldn't create the SQLite database on our file system because it didn't know where to create it. And let's see where it creates it now. I did create it in the wrong one. So yeah, I was mistaken there. Delete that. We wanted to use router. Okay, very cool. I just got a notification from Twitch, said build a community complete. All right. Neat. Very cool. I guess that means we have 50 people who are interested in doing this. Live coding for Code Buddies. Where did my code go? Let's try this. Root dir and run those migrations again. That's going to create a SQLite file, populate it with all the default tables and such. There we are. Very, very good. Right there. Now if I Python matchpy, run server, actually create super user. If I can log in, it's going to ask for a username. Just keep it simple. Really, we should not use, we should think about if we're going to use usernames at least. We can app mention people with usernames, but if we don't plan that feature, it might be better to not use the username field and rather use email for username. Anyway, but now I need a username. Just pretend I have that one. It's a common password, very simple password. Now I can run server. It's getting a little dark in my room. I'll be right back. Very cool. Server's running local host 8000. Control Shift C. Good stuff. What are we? A couple hours into it. We just got it running, but there was some interesting maintenance and discussions that occurred. Very nice. So we got the CBView 3, CodeBuddies version 3 Django prototype up and running with SQLite database. Now it's cool. I'm going to commit this and ask, that we just let developers do that. So DB SQLite should be in our git ignore. And I think, he thinks if we would just use standard git ignore, we'd be good to go. I did move it to the base directory. I thought I had left it in place and duplicated it. So what I'll do is I'll commit in the GitHub default. Oh, did you notice that we have Django debug toolbar? Very cool. I've been wanting to work with this. We can update to Django 3 now, maybe. So that's a cool thing. What was I going to do? GitHub. Git ignore. Yeah, I'll copy all of that in. Python git ignore. Find the files that are deleted raw. That's what I'm trying to do here. And replace them. Save. Okay, let's see what we've lost in doing that. Okay, so we've added a couple. Oh my goodness. I don't know what this stuff is. Well, I should leave it alone then. So at first we were developing with a little bit of React in mind. I'll reset it. Discard changes. Find the Django stuff section. commit that. Now we're good to go. Tossicon says BRB. All right. Very cool. So let's check out this package, y'all. Here's what we're here to do. I'm gonna leave these Code Buddies links up if you're interested in joining. I think I've already shared the link in the chat. I'll go ahead and share it again for any new visitors here. CodeBuddies.org. That's the correct one. The second link is the correct one. We're rebuilding this Code Buddies platform. It's open source on GitHub. It's quite an active community. You can see we've got over 1,000 hangouts, including this one, that have been organized. A lot of people learning different things, a lot of discussions going on. Tons of study groups. This is the cool thing on Code Buddies. If you're not interested in Python, Django, yeah, I understand it's not for everybody, but there's a lot of different things you can learn about and help teach and help other people learn here. Game development, Python, study groups, how to use GitHub. If you're Java oriented or Rust, there's a Rust study group with 14 people in there. A lot of good stuff. Job interviews, working with AWS, that's a very popular one. A lot of hype there. I don't know if it's all worth it. PHP is also very popular. It's been around for a long time. Fairly mature ecosystem, if not inconsistent language. So yeah, good stuff. A lot of things you can learn. Elixir on CodeBuddies.org. We are going to check out Django Taggit. The basic idea is when you add a resource to Code Buddies, if it's either a learning resource or a community website or a news article relating to programming, coding, we have a taxonomy of terms we're going to apply to those so that we can then, I believe the idea is that you query it. So if you're looking for Python related everything, then you could just query for things that tagged Python and display those. That's the conventional use of tags. The way the tags are currently implemented is just in our prototyping process, they're a static list. So let's go ahead and check out the code as it exists under our file. So it's a little redundant. Why is everything being defined under there? That's actually, let me think here for a second. Anyway, that's the way it is. We have a resources app. If I manage start app, is it going to know where to put it? Let me just try that. Delete this app. Necrophage TV, thanks for the follow. Oh, Climate Coder, thanks for the follow. I just noticed that. All right, and thanks for the host. Wow, hosted us for 30 minutes. Tasukan, thanks for the follow. Andre, great. Thank you for the follow. Hope to see you around the live coding sessions. All right, so I just created an app just to test this. Now it's gonna create it in the sort of wrong place. But the correct place, to be honest. So we should catch that early. All right. Sort of a little bit difficult giving feedback, tactful feedback, but well-intentioned to try to get this project to follow conventional practices. Sometimes it turns into a little bit of a back and forth. In any case, I believe we should be defining our apps outside of this CB3 Django prototype folder. This is supposed to be used mainly for configuration, like it's the default. The cookie cutter Django is kind of inventing its own conventions, and I don't know if it's best that we follow them exactly. This is a dang good book, though, if you're interested in learning Python. 2 scoops of Django 111. Now Django 3 is out, but this book is still really, really relevant. It's not published that long ago. It was published like right before Django 2 was released. And Django is also on a more rapid release cycle now. But anyways, this 1.11 is a long-term support version, and a lot of the stuff covered in this book, the best practices, the APIs, they haven't really changed. It doesn't thrash about that much. So I highly recommend getting a PDF copy. I bought a print copy, and they actually signed it. That was nice. That's really cool of them. So I think this is doing a lot more than we need, but I just want to see what their file structure is, what they're recommending, so we don't fight too much. The cookie cutter project, but at the same time, I want to follow more conventional Django project structure. And by default, Django is creating new apps in the project root where, like managed Pi is. Oops. Well, I don't see an easy way of finding that, so. Is conventionally. I know this is probably the part that's going to be a little bit more controversial or a little bit more fraught, is framing this as a task. If I say consider reorganizing, at least we can consider it, and if we don't want to do it, that's fine. I believe we should do it, though. Just stick close to convention. resources, users. And this thing doesn't realize that backticks are code snippets, so I just have to kind of ignore those. Otherwise, how's my grammar? Well, it's kind of formal, which is okay. We're doing software development. It's okay to be formal, and a little bit friendly and a little bit confident. Yeah, I think those are okay. I mean, it's from after. I'm not trying to be rude or crass or criticize people, but I believe convention is really important. And I just think I think we're learning our Django chops a little bit, and maybe we've made a couple mistakes, such as creating this, checking the 2 million lines, I think it's 2 million lines of code in from our Python virtual environment. This is just another small mistake that's easy to recover. All right, cool. No need. So, in any case, I'll work with things as they are. I'll delete this app, this testing app. And our resources app contains a model. And this is where we have tags. This should be, maybe I'll lint the whole thing first and see what that looks like. A few lines changed. Yeah, maybe. There we go. Just some small stuff, linting, adding white space between comments mainly, removing extra lines. Not too bad. That's what an auto linter does. It just takes care of those things for you. Very nice. Doesn't have to be adversarial or confrontational. Just get a code standard and follow it. Have your linter do most of the work for you. Cool beans. I would like some tea. My tea's not too cold. Now, how do we, so I got everything running, and signing in, it's not, the server's not running though. Signing works, testaruni, my info, name of user, just put my first name, it's cool. Update button's not very visible, but it's a button. Email, yeah, recent verification. All right, cool. Now let's see if we've got an API. I'm just gonna guess. Nope. So Django REST framework might not be using the default API. I just wanted to add a little bit of data, but it's maybe not so important. So if we take a closer look at the model, we've got a resource which can be of one of several types. You know, videos, podcasts, podcast episode, talks, tutorials, blogs, courses, games, events, libraries, tools, and websites. This is just going to be a big directory for helping people learn to code, find cool stuff, and share it. We did override the ID using a UUID field. By default, I think Django models use incremental ID. Yeah, UUID is a little bit better. So we go to title, description, URL, refer, credit, date published, and some internal created and modified dates, media type, paid, and tags. Now for this, and this was a conversation, it was controversial about whether to use raw JSON for the tags. And I think the original design was just, we're prototyping this thing, so we're trying to move fast and get some tangible feedback, so that's understandable. And in the API response object, we have a nested JSON array of tags, each with a UUID. So that's the data that comes out of the response. And then hence it would have to be the data that goes into it, since we're storing it in a JSON field. Now, frankly, I think JSON in a relational database should be a last resort, and for very specific reasons, very specific optimizations. If you don't have a very specific reason or optimization, you're trying to keep that data local to the objects, use proper relational semantics, use proper foreign key, and in this case, we just want to be able to reuse these tags and query them and query matching documents, and keeping it in a JSON list, I believe, is going to be it would be a performance penalty, because it's basically just string text. Even if we keep UUIDs inside of this JSON string, those UUIDs aren't guaranteed to be consistent across resource documents. People could use the same tag and put an arbitrary UUID in there. So Django actually has, the Django ecosystem has this Django Tagit plugin that I believe, and it's maintained by this organization Jazzband, which are trying to keep Django projects alive and maintain that stuff that won't go into the core of Django. The API is pretty simple. I think it's more or less just changing this from a JSON field to this taggable manager. Then we have to look into the API to see how that works. So I'm just going to do a little bit of that today. I'll open a pull request for feedback and discussion, testing, and I'll probably continue work another day because we're already at 2 hours. I need to run it by the library today. I will be live coding again today at 7 o'clock Eastern European time. That's 5 o'clock GMT. We're going to work on a different project there, another Django project. So if you want to check out some more Python Django development, come on back over. Hey, see you later, level 2. Hope you get some good sleep. Isn't it nighttime your time? Hey, Hayes, welcome, and you're welcome for the stream. I hope to see you around again. Level 2 says, it's fun storing JSON in MySQL. Yeah, and I think they added that to Postgres relatively recently, and I think it's a little bit misused. I can understand it. And actually, you know, when you're getting data out, and I'm working with data on a regular basis, trying to do analysis and things like that, there's just a lot of gotchas, a lot of landmines you'll encounter. So I just try to avoid it, and I think backend people like doing JSON because they don't have to think about a data model, and they can kind of put raw data in the database. It's very convenient. But I believe every use of every default use of JSON field is technical debt until you know you've got a specific optimization you need to make and you have a specific justification, but not just use it as first recourse. It's a little bit like a cutting a corner, and we're going to be prototyping here. We're cutting corners because we're wanting to move fast and get validation on this issue. I just want to caveat that, and I'm not criticizing the developers. I think every contribution to this CodeBuddies is welcome, and Bethany has taken a leadership role here and written so much code here. So yeah, definitely. I just want to say Bethany has written the code, and this is not a criticism of their code at all. Just this one specific aspect I'd like to hopefully improve. As you can see from the Git blame, Bethany has written so much of this code already, so Crucial couldn't have had this much progress without them. But let's go ahead and just check it out, a small example, and see if it works. Hayes Anderson, don't have to get DBAs to take action on your work item. Right, so by storing the JSON right in the database, you can just keep on keeping on. Yeah, well, where I work, the table, the schemas are defined in the backend code, and same thing with Django. So yeah, you can modify your table schema right here. So yeah, you don't have to have a DBA for that in this case either. Yeah, but the DBA would help you justify the reason to optimize it when you need data locality or something for your performance reasons. All right, so we're going to just go ahead and pip install it. Django tag it. Just double checking that we're in the correct virtual environment here. Let's see where that went, and successfully installed it. Now, another problem we're going to encounter with pip is that we need to do some project dependency upgrades, but it doesn't have a constraint solver, so we might end up breaking things trying to upgrade to Django 3, for example, whereas pip might get that down the road, a constraint solver to get your compatible versions, but definitely pip and Poetry do have it, so I might be able to just use one of those type of projects, solve the constraints, save the package, export as requirements text, something like that. A little bit of jumping around. Now it looks like nothing changed. Why? My pip install something, do I have to tell it to modify my? Oh, pip freeze, that's right. Now that's again, Django, pip env and Poetry, they just update your project dependencies. Requirements. No, you just don't use the -R, you just do that. And another thing is these are well organized requirements, but now they're not, they're alphabetical. So it makes it hard to see that I'm using, that I've had just one, potentially just one package, but apparently now we've got 113. Again, I think cookie cutter's kind of doing their own thing here, and it's just not following convention, and it's creating a little bit more friction than is useful. Hayes Anderson says, I am a fan of normalized data. Their normal form? I don't know how, that's a pretty tricky one, isn't it? Oh. I don't know how to proceed here, because our requirements are here, base, local, and production. And pip just wants to freeze the whole thing. And this is a development dependency. Ah, man. I recommended we try pipenv a while back. That got more or less shot down. In any case, maybe it's for the better. Now I'm recommending sort of that we use Poetry. But maybe that would get shot down too. Because all the requirements is doing is just bringing in these base and local. And I don't know what all Django Tagit relies on. I kind of need my packaging tool to just do my packaging for me. But when we have this nicely organized package, it just doesn't let my packaging tool do my packaging for me. It's nice, it's good, a human thing, but human readable thing. I'm just gonna be honest, I'm gonna commit this and say what I installed. I don't have the greatest feeling about it, but I don't know how to move forward. It's not like a bad feeling, though. If I were to just listen to my gut, I think this is okay. My gut's sort of saying that yeah, I guess cookie cutter Django is kind of adding too much of its own flavor to the recipe. Django, tag it, and pip freeze, that's what we did. Okay, so now we can use it from tag it managers import taggable model. Taggable manager. And then our resource tags will then be, again, I think in Bethany's credit, I want to just affirm that they have done so much work already, and you have to fight this, I don't know if it's a fight, but you need to get things out, and you need to, the fight with complexity, to be honest. And sometimes just working right with a JSON field is simpler for the time being. I think that's what they were looking at, just how do I get this API mocked up so we can start using it in a simple manner. And that's so totally justified, totally great approach. And it's also a good learning experience to work with the JSON field. And now that's the only reason I'm just zeroing on this one part. It's like something tangible I can contribute right now and gets me in the flow of looking at the Code Buddies project, all this good stuff. So yeah, I don't want, if Bethany watches this video, to think that I'm like hypercritical or criticizing their work or anything like that. That's not the spirit here. That's not the intention here. This is just a collaborative project. So yeah, that's all. I would just say, then that's it. You just have taggable manager. Very cool. Now there's going to be more work. I have to look at the API and stuff, but again, I'm kind of running along here. Yeah, so I just want to highlight that they're looking for a simplified database schema right now. Totally understandable. I agree with that. Because I got the feature out the door. We got pull requests reviewed and merged. Good stuff. Very cool. Hayes Anderson says, second normal form is plenty in terms of database normalization. Yeah, I agree. I'm trying to re-spark my interest in programming. I know exactly what I need to do, but I just don't want to do it anymore. But I gotta. I spent the past year teaching myself electronics, and that bug has my current interest, but my career is in software. Okay. Well, then it sounds like, what about Internet of Things, IoT devices? Is that maybe a way to harmonize your interests? Something to get you on a common thread where you get to work with hardware, you get to satiate your passion for working with hardware and make it do things like Arduino, for example, or Raspberry Pi. So yeah, I'm just going to commit this change in. Resource tags. All right, very cool. I'll take a quick look at the API, then I gotta run to the library, and I need to take a break for lunch and things like that. I'll be doing live coding a little bit later tonight. So, I believe our API definitions are in the same folder, or at least they're the views, okay. Or in serializers. Just take a look. Resource view. All right, let's check out these serializers. Very cool. And I'll look at the docs, the Jazzband Django tag docs for how the tag should work. What's our URLs? I'm trying to. Now the Django REST framework should just give me a user interface for the API that I like out of the box. Let me just see if that's enabled. So I need the master URLs, which typically are kept here. But it looks like this is not following a conventional package Django project layout, which makes things, it adds friction, honestly, coming from different, yeah, they moved it there. The cookie cutter Django, I think, does this kind of stuff. All right. So it's purely API driven, and we're not using, it looks like we're not using the Django REST framework auto-generated stuff. What am I doing here? Come on, ding dong. It's not running. I'm getting a little bit tired here. Oh yeah, I have to make that migration. Python. Ah. Hey, Anderson, sorry if you responded to me. I'm just in my internet went out. Oh yeah, I just asked if you're interested in doing work with Internet of Things. That way you could combine your passion for hardware hacking with your vocation of software development. So your vocation and avocation sort of start to blend and merge. You know, and you're, I'm sure, aware of Arduino and things like that. Hayes Anderson said, I just thought I'd find some programming streams and just kind of get back into the flow of what is current. Yeah, and don't get too, to be honest, don't get too fixated on what's current, but the flow of what's current. That's a good pun, by the way. Good job. Focus on what you're trying to build. Yeah, and then don't get sidetracked. I think I'm going to harsh on the JavaScript community, and I think we get too focused in the JavaScript development community on what is current, what is modern, and we lose a lot of legacy and a lot of maturity. Yeah, and then the patterns that are really promoted widely, those are oftentimes developed for very large projects, enterprise projects that have very specific needs and constraints that most smaller projects and just one-off things don't ever really bump up against. Even things that are you know, projects are designed to be around and maintained for a while, they probably won't hit the scalability issues that these frameworks are encountering, but then the whole ecosystem is then thrust to convulsions? I don't know if that's the right word, but yeah, in terms of like churn and like having to do things the right way, the scalability myth that, I don't know, I just don't want to get too far off on that. But it's a source of frustration for me. So yeah, what do you want me to build? Hayes Anderson says, well, I'm an old Perl hacker and Perl is dead, so I have to move on. Yeah, it sounds like Perl 5 didn't quite maintain its community. Sort of went through a similar process with like Python 2 to 3, where some people had a hard time making through that event horizon, so to speak. And it wasn't even so much backwards breaking, I think, as maybe Perl 5 is from Perl 4. Or Perl 6 killed Perl 5, that's right. Okay, sorry, I got those ones. a little bit confused. I haven't done much Perl. I've been a Python enthusiast for a while now. So I'm going to add another issue to add Python REST framework. Enable Python REST framework. Let's add the thing while I'm typing. Django REST framework. Browsable API. Is that the word? Browsable? Browsable. Why didn't my thing tell me that I was making a fool of myself? That is ignorable. Hayes Anderson says, Python is fine. I also know some Ruby. Yeah, so there you go. With those languages, particularly if you're doing web-oriented development, you're in really solid and mature grounds. You know, Ruby on Rails, Python, Django. Flask is a little bit low level, but still viable. Yeah. What do you prefer? Like, what kind of language kind of like speaks to your coding style? And particularly, what kind of language ecosystem has components that you might need for the types of projects you want to work on? Are you wanting to work on web-oriented projects? Are you wanting to work on hardware-oriented projects? It sounds like hardware, but yeah, that's what I'm asking Hayes. Like, it's back to like finding right tool for the job. You got to kind of have an idea of your job, and I think oftentimes we just find right tool for the hype or the trend is what we focus on. I don't think that's I think that's really misguided. Very wasteful. All right, cool beans. Oh, it says I can improve my grammar. Oh, passive voice. I just am unsure. Is not currently enabled. That's still passive voice though, isn't it? No. Is it? Passive voice is a confusing one to me. Yeah. Okay. How about I just delete it? How about that? No? Is this still passive voice? How about just experiment? Doing it, submitting it. Jason McBig, are you in New York? No, I'm in Finland. They're pretty different, pretty similar, I think, what, latitude? Do I have a New Yorkan accent? What time is it in New York? Hayes Anderson says, I'm traditionally a web programmer. Okay, Hayes, but where are you going? Where I see where you've been, and I can kind of understand why you were working with Perl a little bit, because I think that had a lot of uses in particularly the early web, like 90s, early 2000s, maybe web stuff, CGI related stuff. Are you wanting to go? No, English is my mother tongue, my äidinkieli. I'm an expat from the U.S., from Kansas. I have family here in Finland, so thank you. My accent is amazing. Yeah. Now there's a lot of English accents. I think my accent is from sort of Western America, like America would be my Midwestern accent leaking through America. But I did live in California for a while, and Oregon and Washington. I took that New York Times language survey. It's like a dialect survey, and it said that my little dialect map region comes from the western United States, even though I spent most of my life in Kansas and Florida. Where are you from, Jason McBig? Hayes Anderson says, yep, although that CGI package was pure crap. Hayes Anderson says, it was just not maintained well. All right. Jason McBig says, I'm from the Middle East. Cool. Whereabouts in the Middle East? And sorry, on behalf of I feel sorry about man, I am not proud of the United States in general for what we've done in the Middle East, Latin America, even in the United States, what we've done to indigenous populations. We have a really bad track history. I just am ashamed of the more I learn about it. So I'm really, so I'll just say that. Okay, sorry, but did you catch what I said sorry about, or are you asking still? Hayes Anderson says, I am in Tennessee. I don't know if Jason McBig says, I don't know if that's bad, to be honest. Oh, like the recent stuff? I don't know the motives. Yeah, I don't know the motives either, but I think a lot of it is greed and driven by oil. Essentially about resources, about privatization and accumulation of natural resources and land going back to the 19th century. I think that's the thrust of American imperialism, manifest destiny. Yeah. Level 2 says, what should the United States be ashamed of? Trump? I don't think it's just Trump. Level 2, I'm not even saying that. Donald Trump is a symptom of this legacy we've had since the founding of the nation of the United States. And I'm not ashamed to be American or anything like that, but I think the more I learn about the colonialism and imperialism and the amount of counter-democratic intervention, in other words, deposing democratically elected leaders, that the American government has overtly and covertly participated in, the more I am a little bit kind of ashamed of that. Yeah, that's awesome. I don't want to turn this whole thing into a big political thing, but yeah, there's just some big stuff happening right now, even contemporary issues that are very problematic. Israel, Jason McBig says, Hayes says, where I am heading, well, I need to get a job first, and then maybe worry about getting involved in some real projects. My dilemma now is getting past the recruiters who think I am deprecated. Oh, because you mentioned Perl, and that's the whole JavaScript mentality there. If you mention some sort of jQuery, then you're deprecated, but jQuery is still really relevant. Hayes Anderson says, empirism. Level 2 says, it's ugly. It's truly ugly. All right, I think we're in consensus there. Let's probably try to steer our conversation back into developer stuff and away from the political issues. But yeah, I can't help that stuff coming up, huh? All right, so then there's no DRFUI. So let's see. Hayes Anderson says, I need to get a job first and maybe worry about getting some real projects. And Hayes, you're in Tennessee, and you probably would be open to a remote job, right? Just thinking, might be good. And worry about getting a job and then getting involved in real projects. Sometimes, though, it might be good if you do a little bit of side work, and maybe you already have, on some open source projects and build a portfolio. GitHub is not your resume, but it is certainly a good portfolio, a good place to develop a portfolio. Yes, indeedly doodly. But you gotta, yeah, it's kind of a carriage horse thing. You gotta sort of have a job in order to have time to work on side projects, but then your job takes all your time, so you can't work on side projects. And sometimes you have to have built side projects so you have a portfolio so that people will hire you and take you seriously, so to speak. Yeah, it's a tricky situation. Have you seen the website Remote OK? Hayes, let me just double check here. Get a remote job you can do anywhere. I'll just load it up on the stream real quick, even though. There you go. And another good one, I know you're interested in development and such like that, but if you look at Idealist, not Idealista, just Idealist. You sacrifice your free time for a better future. Yeah, that makes sense. Where are we at? Tennessee. Nessee. A lot of these, now it doesn't give me my search query here, but if you search for Tennessee, you might actually find a very fulfilling job here on Idealist. I actually started my development career, my technology career, through an internship I landed on Idealist at a nonprofit organization. Not-for-profit meaning it's mission-oriented, not that it doesn't need money, that doesn't need profit. It's really a misnomer. And not that it can't pay salaries. Oftentimes these not-for-profit organizations do pay salaries. So yeah, you might find something here. They used to have filters, for job function, such as data evaluation and analyst, database administration, graphics design might be something, technology and IT. And oftentimes you'll be able to expand your horizons. You might even be able to get a job at a school, and then you'd have an opportunity to teach. So it looks like they even have a couple of them in Tennessee. One of them in Tennessee, executive assistant to an office manager. Might not be as programming oriented as you're wanting, but what if I just take the location filter off and then take a look? Engineering manager, the Obama Foundation. That's kind of interesting. Oh, foundation is non-for-profit seeking funds to further the legacy of the Obamas, I'm assuming. Here's a quick query. Hey, what's up, Cartuzo? Yeah, and some of those jobs are also, they allow remote, so. All right. Where are we at? I'm having this weird error. I can't get my migrations in. All right, so when I try to make my migrations, I get resource tags, field 300. Field defines a relationship with a model. Oh, you know why? Because I didn't migrate. When I installed the Django taggable, I have to run these migrations before. When I send the Django tag it module, it's going to create a database table and all that good stuff. And then I need to let it migrate that in before I can actually make a reference to that. So boing! No migrations to apply. I'm not reading the docs. You're catching me making a fool of myself. Not so bad, but it happens. I need to add the Django Taggit app. I need to read the instructions. Getting started. Add Taggit to your list of installed apps. Curtuzo says, you are coding front end? Well, we're mainly back-end oriented here in the Django app. I think there's going to be a JavaScript front end for the next version of CodeBuddies, but my personal perspective on things is that you don't need JavaScript until you need JavaScript, and you don't need a full JavaScript front end until you really know you want to go the SPA route. I think a lot of projects just start off with the assumption that we need React and Webpack and all that stuff. Really, you can get so far with just some HTML and then progressively enhance your app with specific JavaScript optimizations, such as loading in paginated results without having to refresh a whole page. And there's some cool stuff that lets you do that without having to surrender your whole front-end development to a JavaScript framework and build system. Very cool. Like I just learned of one of it's called something. We were talking in Hacker News. Had a good conversation with some people on Hacker News. Let me look it up on Hacker News on my mobile browser. I read Hacker News usually on my phone. Intercooler.js. That's a hard name for me to remember. Check this out. There's a few examples. I can also show you some light DOM. There's like 5 examples that came in. This in the vein of really light JavaScript dependency on the front end, but it gives you an SPA-like experience. It gives you an experience like a single page app where you're not having to do page reloads. I closed the other tabs of the one, but this light DOM is one that I recommended. It's 3 kilobytes. No build tool. You don't have to surrender your whole front end. You can just write HTML in a little bit of a JavaScript sort of instance with reactive data binding, template, event lifecycle, and your template language is just HTML. It's no JSX or anything that needs to be compiled or fragmented throughout multiple JavaScript files or classes, functions, render functions. You just get a cohesive view of your entire and a declarative view of your entire element. It doesn't have to be your whole app. You can still write components, right? You can still write buttons in smaller reusable chunks. I think this is the way, and it's oriented towards standards. Web components are now a part of the framework, the web platform. So you can write your own custom elements. So that's a good example. And then this intercooler.js is a really cool way of getting declaratively interacting with AJAX-y data, so data coming from an API endpoint, and then getting that data back and having even animations in there to animate in the objects, fade them in or slide them in or things like that. So it's good stuff that I think is going on without just going in all in on React or create a React app or even Vue. Vue allows you to do progressive JavaScript, though. It can be sprinkled in, just like a jQuery tag in a page, then you can start using that library on the front end. Vue, though, is, I think, a 20 kilobyte dependency minified, whereas something like Light DOM, 3 kilobytes. I'm not sure how big Intercooler is. These are also very cool, though. Minimal JavaScript just when needed, and you can have the benefits of these reactive, declarative front-end development experiences without sacrificing server-side rendering, which was already provided by these Laravel, Ruby on Rails, Django frameworks, for a decade now. We're not having to chase our tail and come back around full circle with a really deficient server-side framework where we don't have to throw out the Djangos and Ruby on Rails. Cool. Discord, I'm not in the Discord level 2. I need to get in there, but actually I'm kind of leaning towards using Matrix chat, which via Riot I am. If I can just get a channel set up in there, I think this is actually a better way forward than the Discords and the Slacks, to be honest. It's got integrated voice and chat and stuff. It's maybe not as mature or well architected, but it is fully open source and and it integrates with tools like Discord and Slack and IRC. So it's not trying to build its own little bubble or silo there. So look for, and project is in the lower hand corner, Grilla, github.com/codebuddy/Django project. I should implement these chat commands, I'm sorry. So now I'll just do them myself. I should put a little bot there. I see you're using the chat bot commands, and I appreciate that. And I actually thought the command would work. Level 2 is actually given a chat history of these cool JavaScript projects. That's why they're wanting the Discord integration, so that we can have a history of this stuff. And the Twitch chat is ephemeral. It's gone as soon as we share stuff in here. So yeah, having a more permanent chat room would be beneficial. All right, level 2, I appreciate your work there to keep a history here. Cool. Well, let's see if I can get past this little error, and we're almost at 3 hours. I'm going to have to cap it at 3 hours because I'll be doing another 2 to 3 hours of live coding tonight. And I don't want to kind of burn myself out too much. We're going to be experimenting with a new plugin, by the way, for VS Code called Live Share, where my friend John and I will be kind of live coding together, and you'll hear his voice and my voice, and you will see each other's cursors and stuff. It's pretty cool, actually. Oh, Lovely says, I'm doing this for me, keeping track of all those links. Okay, that's fine. Of course. Hayes Anderson says, the whole JavaScript thing back in the day was pre-validation for submitting form data. People did not like submit results that told them to correct their mistakes, so we had to write 2 layers of validation. So silly. Yeah, that still hasn't changed, I think. There are some options that will, like this actually, this intercooler actually can make AJAX requests, API requests that will validate your data as you enter the form. And in their examples, they show that. So, inline form validation. So actually your validation can occur on the server. You don't have to maintain 2 language implementations of your form validation code. So it's pretty cool, and you can like throttle it. So if I put in just like, and it says, whoa, you're valid, your email's not valid. And their source code actually includes, not only the HTML, but also a mock server. So you can see that this is actually an AJAX call that's being made. Pretty cool stuff. Now the caveat here is that with your intercooler JS functions, server-side functions, they're actually returning rendered HTML. So you got a little bit of overhead there, and you're not sending back raw data, you're sending pre-rendered templates. But Django actually has functions for that. It has a render function that'll take a parameterized template with string interpolation tags and render some data into that and then send it. That's how, in fact, the Django views work. So this is not that different from Django views in a way. And other server-side rendering frameworks, I'm sure, would be similar. But that means you could use your JSX or whatever here on the server side. It doesn't matter, whatever your framework is, and you're pretty much writing regular old HTML, which is what I'm in the mood for. Learning more about the web framework, investing my efforts in the web framework. That's a big one. Grilla says, by the way, how do you see Meteor's future in 2020? I'll say this. The project I've written Meteor in, that I am still a primary maintainer of, we are migrating away from Meteor. I don't have confidence. And again, I keep harshing a little bit on the JavaScript ecosystem. And mostly my frustration comes from my experience with Meteor, but I also see that pervasive mentality in other front-end libraries and frameworks. And I think Meteor had a really great ethos when it started about developer simplicity, developer ergonomics, rapid prototyping, doing things simply, not having to worry about build tools, even though that was doing building behind the scenes. It did a lot of things really good, but then the scalability crew and then shiny new crew got a hold of the development initiatives. And I think it lost its path. And yeah, Agnostic Solutions, says Hayes Anderson. Yeah, like web components, I think is a really good example. Or things that embrace web components, even if they add layers on, like reactivity and stuff, and or things that are using more or less regular web standards like HTML with maybe some extra attributes or something like that. And jQuery is still very valid. Mockjacks, I don't know. It's big though, it's hefty. I guess it's 80 kilobytes minified. So yeah, if you don't have to use, if you can use vanilla JavaScript, go for it. Vanilla JavaScript with a sprinkling, 3 kilobyte sprinkling of a light DOM library might be good. So this is where I see my efforts going in 2020. I think that's not the way the JavaScript community is going to be going for the next foreseeable future. I think React has an incredible momentum. These build tools are getting more and more complex, although there are some build tools that are cropping up to simplify it, like that Snowpack is one of them, I think. JS. Yeah, so there's efforts to simplify and get some sanity back in front-end web development. Snowpack.dev. Boing! All right, lots of good conversations going on. Cartuzo says, I'm very happy that I found your profile on Twitch. You have many knowledge. Oh, cool. I appreciate it. And yeah, remember, these are all just opinions, and I also welcome your experiences and opinions here. And again, I'm just trying to be an active part of the Code Buddies community, because there's a lot of perspectives here, and I'm pretty narrowly focused on my little Python Django project. And the way I do things is not necessarily reflective of the broader community. So yeah, just totally hook into this Code Buddies community if you have a chance. And maybe you can help others along our learning journeys to find cool tools, best practices, and things like that. Grill says, oh man, I wish Meteor would continue to be the framework it used to be. Yeah, they literally lost their original ethos, and you can check the web archive, Internet Archive's Wayback Machine. I did this a while back. I can't remember the exact page, but it says, when you looked at the original Meteor website, it was, well, let's just take it over real quick. They had a mission statement, I think. They had a mission page, no? Let's just find out. Oh, no, they did. No, it couldn't have been that far back. 2007? What did I do? $400 error. Good grief. It must be in transition phase. 2020. I'm gonna look around. I want to look around 2014 when I first discovered Meteor. The website. It wasn't as polished or professional. Let's see. For the same stuff we have to do monorepos and all that kind of jazz. It's such a shame. Cartuzo says, I think you live in the USA, but I live in Poland. We have many good programmers and people with interest in computers, etc. But I would very like the USA and people, but I very much like the people from USA who live in this country. Yeah, I actually live in Finland. I'm from the United States, that's right, but I have moved to Finland. All right, well, this Internet Archive thing is just not going to work out, but Meteor.com did used to have a mission for the Meteor framework, and in that mission it included simplicity, like the word simplicity, and maybe something like developer experience or developer ergonomics, something along those lines, keeping it simple. But then, I don't know, almost with the rise of Meteoric rise of React, and this, what I would guess is it was more like not just an emphasis, but like an obsession with scalability and this really abstract concept of what scalability is. Is Meteor scalable? And all these conversations I kept up in that process, Meteor lost its vision. And I also wish they wouldn't have banked so heavy on MongoDB, because frankly, the types of applications I've been working on are, the data model is relational in nature, and I didn't realize at the time how much effort would be spent just in writing, functions to define relationships and to traverse relationships. And then validations and schemas weren't included because MongoDB was schemaless, more or less, document-oriented. So I just think that those factors are why I'm moving back into Django. Cool beans. Hayes Anderson says, I took a long road to learn coding. Started with BASIC, back when people were first dropping quarters into Pac-Man. Stopped after high school, and eventually enrolled in a computer science degree. Nice. Popcorn Panzer says, I currently favor Vue with SCSS and TypeScript for front end, and whatever you're doing on the back end, Meteor is more or less dead by now for me. Yeah, I agree, Popcorn Panzer, Meteor's pretty dead. And I also have been checking out Vue. I'm not super excited about TypeScript, I've got to be honest. I don't want to do any kind of pre-compiling, transpiling, or whatever. I actually got burnt by CoffeeScript even. I'm not super excited about static typing. I don't believe the hype about simplicity and reduced bugs. I know that the most common bugs are type related, missing attribute type things. But I'm not buying it. I think there's too much benefit of using dynamically typed language. like Python, for example, or even JavaScript. So I don't want to lose that. Yep, and I'm fine writing CSS. But yeah, Vue I like because it does offer the broad choice that people can, if you want to use TypeScript now with Vue 3 coming up, yeah, you're going to have good experience. If you don't want to use TypeScript, that's fine. If you don't want to use Webpack, you can actually just sprinkle in Vue. So I like that level of choice that keeps kind of Vue in a way true to its original developer simplicity ethos, but also lets people who do have specific needs, they do need strong typing support, lets them interact with it and have a good developer experience. Let's see. Hey, what's up, Moog Twitch? Welcome to the chat. Hayes Anderson says, wait till your whole language dies. It probably won't, but mine did. Always have a plan B. So Hayes is referring to Perl 5, right? Hayes Anderson says, it's still possible for me to find some Perl work. Languages die hard. I remember when CoffeeScript first hit the scene. J Tree, welcome. Is this Vim? This is VS Code, I believe, if you're meaning the... I just realized my little dialogue thing there isn't appearing. Can you see this? No, can't see that either. Yeah, this is VS Code 1.41. JJ Tree says, I use Emacs. Okay, Holy Wars. Popcorn Banter says, I use it TypeScript very lightly, just enough so my IDE is able to help me better. I only annotate public interfaces, for example. So it's more or less vanilla JavaScript with some TypeScript smooth. And that sounds like a decent approach. Do you still need the sort of the transpiling step? Do you still need a build tool? I think the question would be yes, though, but I'm not exactly sure because I haven't. So I'm genuinely curious. Hazel Anderson says Emacs is a solid tool. Emacs is an operating system, from what I've heard. JJ Tree says indeed. And Hayes says, yeah, Perl 5 died, and Perl 6 is not similar enough, or I don't know the subtleties or the significant differences, but I've heard that Perl 6 is just a new language, basically. Grill says the progressive frameworks will be the normal way soon. Yeah, I agree. Particularly, I hope web components have a good life, and I'm seeing more of these cross-platform UI frameworks emerging. Things that work with Angular, Vue, React. It doesn't matter. And that's what the web platform really is about. It's about standardization. It's about staying around, building things for the future that they'll be around for a while, and it's not getting locked into one silo or the other. All right. So I did get my thing migrated, didn't I? Or no? That's the next step, isn't it? So what did we do here? Oh yeah, well I had committed separately. Let's go ahead and go forward. No. Dang. No. Okay. I have to rewrite that code, read the documentation. Did I? No, I did not. I did not add it. I have this copy and pasted here. We got off track. Now that's partially because we're having really interesting conversations, so no worries there. But also just I have really hard troubles focusing. Where's the thing that I'm looking for? The config. It's in config, isn't it? No. Settings. Yes, it is. Base. Oh man. This is what you get from using a non-conventional app structure, a cookie cutter. I know there are reasons. Apps. Okay, third-party apps. Django apps, third-party apps, and then local apps. All right. We are adding a T. It starts with a T. Neen. I will copy this because I don't want to make typos. All right. No, this one, not gonna run in migration. Make migrations. Oh, cool. Lots of good conversation going on still. I'm having to keep up. Hey, Gorilla, thanks for the follow. Hazel Anderson, thanks for the follow. I didn't already thank you for that, so yeah. Kiitos. That's how we say it in suomen kieli. Aizon Caffeini. Ilzon Caffeine. Thanks for the follow. Sorry about that. All right. What else we got going there? Some discussions about Vim and Bash, and yeah, solid tools. Current Vue CLI-based setup comes with everything needed. Webpack, transpiling, linting, pre-configured in a sane way. The actual config files are very small for simple projects. Manually setting up Webpack is a pain. Now, yeah, I don't think developers should be having to subject themselves to that pain. Hot code replacement, incremental compiling, works all like a charm. Yeah, and I know, Evan, you was originally a Blaze core contributor and a Meteor core contributor. And I think he, in a way, has preserved that legacy. The Meteor originally espoused of developer simplicity, developer ergonomics, and just being able to set up a project and move on to developing your idea and not having to focus with building and stuff, compiling, configuration, and all that jankiness. So yeah, that's also why I've got my eye to Vue as well. I did mention earlier, Popcorn, some other projects to keep an eye on, though. I don't know if you were in the chat at that point. You might have been. I'm sorry. Bad short-term memory. LightDOM is very similar to Vue. It's 3 kilobytes instead of 20 kilobytes, and it doesn't require any transpiler or Webpack or any of that stuff. And it's got a lot of the benefits: two-way data binding or one-way, reactivity. You're using HTML templates just like Vue. The API, it's a configuration object, so I know Vue 3 is moving away from that type of API, but anyway, here it is. Yeah, come on. Well, let me deselect that. And then this intercooler.js was also mentioned earlier. I put the links in the chat. I don't know if you can scroll up and check those out. And just a couple other examples. There's a Hacker News thread. Actually, if I just go to here, news.ycombinator.com. I'm not logged in, so I'll have to do that real quick. One moment. Never save my password. I just got enough Y Combinator karma to reach level 2. I added a comment, and here I asked, now that web components are maturing, is there a, wait a minute. Let me find this cool conversation. It's somewhere in the thread where I was, oh, okay. So here's, okay, actually it started for Snowpack. If you read this conversation for Snowpack, there's some interesting stuff going on, mainly related to the complexity in the JavaScript front-end, development debacle or whatever. I don't know. Sorry. So there's some great stuff that comes out of these Hacker News conversations, and a little bit of controversy also. But here's the main thing. We got some great suggestions. I'm looking for the other people's suggestions. Goodness gracious. Here we are. Oh, here it is. Stimulus.js and Umbrella.js. It's like deeply nested in this conversation. There's this thread of how do we do it the simple way? How do we get rid of all this complexity of the Webpack and all that ecosystem? Not just even just build tools at all, not even Snowpack. So this person's like, well, I just use Django, jQuery, and Aircool.js with plain old Docker, which even in today's live coding session, I've had some troubles with Docker. So if we can avoid that, might be good too. Less is more, but also more sometimes is more. So then there's a lot of good anecdotal information here. Can I just link to this? If I link here, this is the thread. Check it out. There's some great stuff that was recommended here. I just threw in my 2 cents. This is the conversation, though. Why jQuery may or may not be relevant. I think it is still relevant, even though it's pretty large, as it was pointed out. It's 80 kilobytes. But there's some nice stuff coming that's pretty, writing regular old HTML in a JavaScript class, and you get some reactivity. This one comes out of Basecamp, they're pretty prolific in the Ruby on Rails world, I guess. And here's some DOM manipulation events handling and Ajax. Actually, I didn't check this one out. So sort of like a $, find me the button, attach an event. So it's more imperative. I think declarative is a good direction for this stuff to go. All right, back on track. I'm actually going to check out this intercooler, though. I'm really excited about this. And maybe I'll do some light DOM stuff, but I haven't actually specifically worked with those yet. Yeah, we need more tooling to solve our tooling problems. Have you used Express.js? I'm just learning JavaScript and interested in Node, and I heard Express is good. I have not. But I don't think it's going to be on a level of abstraction that you're going to get from like a Ruby on Rails or a Django in terms of maturity and the batteries they include. I don't know of one JavaScript backend framework that does approach those, but maybe Express is a good one. Hayes Anderson says, look at a real physical hammer. If it was software, it would look like a Swiss Army knife after a couple of years. Yeah, I have a lot of attachments and everything to do. Other jobs. Well, yeah, you can cut. Yeah, anyway, all right. Now, these frameworks, they also include a lot of things that might not be immediately useful, but when you're in hammer analogy there, it says that those accoutrements, those extra add-ons would kind of be present in your face every time you use the hammer, whereas I don't get that experience when I'm using a framework like Django, for example. I'm importing what I need to use when I need to use it, and when I need tags, then I've got a taggable manager. Do I need to actually add parentheses there? Let me read the docs. Yes, of course, because it's creating an instance of that. All right, so now we have 2 migrations, one for removing the field and one for adding it. Django normally has actually picked up when I rename a field, but I think because I had a syntax error here, the migration didn't go quite as expected. I'll live with that, though. Yeah, it's okay. All right. Express, let's see, creature feep says Hayes Anderson. Level 2 says Express.js is like jQuery, but with a DOM. But there's a lot of library for setting up simple and complex servers. All right. Dirk, welcome to the chat. Dirker Gerbs. Yeah, my friend is learning Django and thinks it's so easy that you don't need to learn Python, just Django and learn its modules. Well, I mean, yeah. You can see, though, well, this is not a good example. Yeah, you can do quite a lot with Django. That confirms what you're saying. I mean, you still need your understanding of Python, like inheritance, why we're putting in the model in this resource. But yeah, I mean, you will use Python libraries every once in a while, so it's good to know about the Python standard library. You'll have to know how pip works or some other similar packaging tool and how to find cool Python libraries on PyP and things like that. Boing. Hay says, you should learn the language that the framework is built upon for sure. Draft, welcome to the chat. I just learned how to web scrape with Python. Can you tell me something worth scraping? Something worth scraping. Let me think about that for a second. What are you, let's see, what are you interested in learning? Something that, there's this archive team. They might have an example of something. What they do is, the archive team works, sometimes controversially, to preserve web content that is at risk of being lost. They are very concerned about the legacy of our digital commonwealth, and so they do a lot of web scraping and probably have some tasks you could find to preserve things like, I don't know, say Django or some kind of a social network is going to go lights out. They would work and are working to preserve the posts and pictures. I think another one was from Imager or something, was going to delete a bunch of old content that was not being viewed often, or something had some criteria. Yeah, so check these people out. I think they would have a better understanding of what needs to be scraped and preserved at this point. Manual projects. They have some projects here. Upcoming projects. Yeah, so this is, I really recommend getting involved here. You'll get to really hands-on experience. You'll be doing a valuable service for the community. You'll have mentors who can steer you down the right path, who can assist you if you have troubles. That's why I'm, again, coming back to this Code Buddies. That's the whole point of Code Buddies, is to build community and help one another learn and, you know, collaborate on things. Everybody has their own unique skill set and background, so we can each bring our own perspective to the project and challenge. And we're all learning from one another. There's not any hierarchy that says this person has all the knowledge, everybody else is subordinate to them. It's really a community. So yeah, get yourself involved in a community online, like the archive team, like Code Buddies. We got our migration in. We were at 3 hours, 15 minutes. I've got to call it good. I haven't even had lunch, and I got to get set up. I will be live coding again in a couple hours, 1900 Eastern European time, 1700 not Central Standard Time, sorry, yeah. GMT, UTC. I don't know which one is the proper way of doing it. My stream schedule below the feed is wrong. I'm sorry. I'm not, over the holidays particularly, I have not been able to keep a schedule, so I don't know how to do that, work on it. But we were able to get some progress made, and this has been a really great chat, and I, kind of sad to have to actually, let's add this config. We want them to be case insensitive so it can find the tag. If I type Python uppercase or JavaScript with all lowercase, or JavaScript camel case, they should really be the same tag in my opinion. So we'll add that to our settings, and then we'll call it a day. I really hope to see everyone around. It's been nice to have so many people chatting here. Some really great conversations. I don't know where I should just put this crispy template back. Fixture directories. Well, kind of can go near the third-party apps. Right. Arbitrary. I think that's how you spell that. So what I'm going to do to wrap up, though, commit these, push them to the clouds, and open a pull request. And drink my tea. I have a little bit more tea here. All right, what important? Wiki is worth scraping. Yep, that's true. It says level 2. Web scraping is an art form that needs practice. Yeah, I've never gone down that. I've not been enticed. I kind of am a little bit worried about web scraping personally. One moment. About my ability to do it and the complexity involved. So anything you'll successfully scrape will improve your ability to scrape anything else. Yeah. Yeah, level 2, I'm going to hop off, but I'll be on later. I will be on later. I know it's late, though, your time, so get some sleep. Make sure you're taking care of your biological need, your body. That's going to be a big contributor to your well-being. Hayes Anderson says, I wrote a library that scraped a certain website back in 2003 and learned quickly that I had to keep it supported, so I deprecated it. Yeah, because like the templates that you're scraping, they'll change, the DOM structure will change. I imagine there's just so much complexity there. I've just never really wanted to go that route. Let's compare and pull request. I will link it to my closes 25. Closes 16. What we need to add is fixtures for the project. I'm gonna create an issue for that while it's hot in my mind, while it's fresh in my mind. Add project fixtures. I think there's called fixtures in. Okay, well that's it. Yeah, cheers. Cheers all. Thanks for coming in. Thanks to Hayes and Level 2. It's been a great conversation. Thanks for the follow, Popcorn Panzer. I appreciate it. I hope to see you all again. I really like having this active of the chat. DSC _. Django sucks. Flask rules. All right, well, yeah, that's fair enough. Welcome to the chat. And I'm sorry I'm hopping off right now, DSC, but if you have some time later on, in a couple hours, a few hours here, I'll be 2 hours. 16, dang. 1 hour I have scheduled. Well, a couple hours, I'm going to have to do a couple of things. No, I'm sorry, I'm converting time zones incorrectly. 3 hours. Hey guys, I'll be back live streaming. Maybe you can see I'm getting fatigued already. Thanks again, everybody, for the flame wars, for the great discussions. I hope to see you all around. Again, this has been a CodeBuddies.org live coding session where we're actually developing on the CodeBuddies next generation platform. Perhaps if we decide Django is the right way to go. If you're interested in getting involved, check out CodeBuddies.org, GitHub repository, github.com/CodeBuddies. There's a couple of other development projects going on to rewrite CodeBuddies.org using JavaScript backend and I think Ruby on Rails. So we'll see which one will be victorious. If you're wanting to contribute to one of those efforts, we could use your help. Thanks again for hanging out, for keeping the chat so interesting and lively, and have a great day.